Hi everyone. In today's class, I would like to talk about chapter 8, which is rate of return analysis, multiple alternatives. So it means that in this chapter, we are trying to use rate of return analysis to compare different projects, different alternatives. In chapter 7, we'll learn about calculating the rate of return for a single alternative for a single project. Now in this chapter, I want to know if I have multiple projects and if I just want to choose the best one using rate of return analysis, what should I do? So I will start this chapter with one example. So let's say I invest money, let's say $1 in a project, and after 1 year, I will make $1.5. You can write this in terms of $1,000, $1,000,000, like $1,000 today, that after 1 year, I will be able to make 1,500. So let's just call this alternative A. And alternative B that we have, let's say I will spend $100,000 at time zero, and after 1 year, I will be able to make $120,000. So the question that we have at this point in this chapter is that if I want to use rate of return analysis, which one should be selected, A or B? From chapter 1, if you remember, we said if projects are the projects or the alternatives are mutually exclusive, what should we do? If they are independent, what should we do? So, and also from chapter 7, if you recall, we said when your interest rate or rate of return was greater than minimum attractive rate of return, the minimum thing that you have in mind, you would accept the investments. Otherwise, if your I star or rate of return was less than MAR, minimum attractive rate of return, if you recall, we said do not invest, don't invest, was our action to take. It was the chapter 7 material. So let's just look at the rate of return for each of these alternatives. For alternative A, it's obvious that your rate of return is 50%. And rate of return on the second one is 28%. Let's put the index of A and B. So if the projects are independent, if the projects are independent following what we have in chapters 1 and 2, if the projects are independent, then what can we do? We said if it's greater than MAR, because projects are or alternatives are compared against do nothing, we can select both. You can invest in both alternatives. But most of the time we are talking about mutually exclusive scenarios, mutually exclusive scenarios. And when we have mutually exclusive, it means that you would the alternatives are compared against each other. So in this case, what should I do? Yes, it's obvious when the projects are independent, I will select both because their rate of return in both scenarios is greater than minimum attractive rate of return, which I assume is, for example, equal to 15%. Something probably I should have emphasized here was, let's say, minimum rate that attracts you as an investor, for example, is 15%. If for this example, your MAR is 15%, you will accept investing in both alternatives. But the question is that if the projects are mutually exclusive, what should I do? And that's exactly the topic of today's discussion. If the projects are mutually exclusive, I want to do rate of return analysis, which alternative, which project should be selected, okay? So let's start doing the work, assuming the projects are mutually exclusive. So let's just write the cash flows, and for alternative that you have, for $1, you could make $1.5. If I want to consider this additional $99 that goes from project A to B, this additional $99, I'm just talking about alternative A. Do you agree that the additional $99 can be at least be invested somewhere that in the worst case scenario for me as an investor can give me 15%? It's the minimum rate that can attract me. So it will be 113.85. So with $1 that I had, cash flow at time 0, this is cash flow at time equal to 1. With $1, I know I could make 1.5. But with remaining $99, in the worst case scenario, I can invest it in a project that gives me 15% interest rate. So if I add up these numbers, it will be 115.35. So in other words, if I have this alternative A, and with $1 of that, I make 1.5, and with $99, I make this much, means that really out of $100 that I have, I could make 115.35. In other words, the interest rate, the actual interest rate for A will be 15.35% if I want to compare it to B. Okay, so that's why I want to look at this comparisons, this analysis, using the approach that we call incremental analysis. So that I will follow this approach that, for example, for alternative A, if I have $1, I will make this much. With additional $99, I can make at least, for example, $113. So through the incremental analysis, I want to know if the additional investment that we have is viable, is justifiable or not. How do we do the incremental analysis for the same example that we are working on? So let's say at time equal to 0, and this is time equal to 1. For project B, we said if I put $100 down, I could make $120. For project A, I said with $1 that I put down, I will make $1.5 here. So let's just calculate the difference between these two alternatives, B minus A. We always go with the larger investments, larger initial investments minus the smaller investments. Because I want to know if the additional investment is justifiable or not. So the difference between these 100, because they are the negative side, so it means the difference is $99 extra investments. So this is additional investment, This additional investment, when I compare B and A, so again, B minus A will be 120 minus 1.5, it will be 118.5. So as you can see, with this additional investment, I will be able to make this much additional benefit. Okay. So if I want to draw the cash flow diagram, so it means with this $99 extra times 0, I'll be able to make 118.5. So if I want to determine the interest rate for this cash flow, which is the cash flow for B minus A, obviously what I need to do is 118.5 minus 99, chapter 1, divided by 99, And if you do the math, it will be 19.7%. Okay. So assume still our MAR is 15%. So I know it is greater than MAR, which is 15%. So our question is answered that this additional investment is justified. Okay, so my conclusion when I calculate this cash flow diagram for the difference for B minus A to see if additional investment in B is justified or not, is to calculate this cash flow, the green cash flow diagram, compare it with MAR. So based on this, since the difference between these two projects, B minus A, has an interest rate which is greater than MAR, I come to the conclusion that additional investment is justified. Okay, so what does it mean when we are saying additional investment is justified? It means that the higher cost alternative wins. Oops, alternative wins. Or in other words, what was the highest cost? It was B. So therefore I would say B is winner. It means you would select alternative B, because the whole thing that we want to do was to compare them with compare B with A and see if I want to use rate of return analysis, what should I do and which one will be selected. So that's the topic of our discussion for chapter 8, that we would like to compare two or even multiple alternatives using rate of return analysis. So I will stop the video at this point.